welcome back. It's Monday. Trying to think back at when we began to notice, those of us who notice things, the loss of the media in this country. But beyond that, the loss of the press, the news media. And it really happened with Bill Clinton when he deregulated the industry. And the FCC sold us out. And they allowed big corporations to begin buying up as much as they wanted in every city in the country. And before Clinton did that, nobody could own more than 50% of the print and electronic media in any city. And after Slick Willie unleashed the demons, it was over. Now we have 6 corporations, all of like mind, owning 95+% of the media. And the Americans who are trapped with the mainstream media as their source of news are basically gone. And many of them are looking to the internet for news, and unless they know where to look, they're not going to find real news there either because of the censorship, the outrageous, disgusting lies that are being perpetrated as reality. It's I think amazing beyond measure what's happened in this country.
It just is amazing. It's you have to wonder what the end game is here, how this is going to wind up, and I can't make any predictions because this is astonishing, and Trump is kind of, to my surprise, is not backing down a bit. I mean, his tweets are stronger than ever. I mean, he's just saying, no.
If he pulls this off, he's going to go down in American history as one of the greatest American presidents. I kid you not. If he were to retire and slither away and allow this kind of a fraud to actually exist and rule the country, he would go down in history, rightfully so, as one of the greatest traitors to America that there ever was. You can't do it. You can't do it. And I don't think he's going to do it. And I'm not the biggest Trump fan in the world. You all know that. Here's another one. Georgia governor, that sleazy Brian Kemp, that fraud who may well be involved in the $100 million paid to Dominion. We don't know. That has to be worked out. And Sidney Powell is after this slime bag. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp's lawyers, now get this, are arguing that protecting Dominion's trade secrets is more important than rooting out vote fraud.
Yeah. And that doesn't surprise me at all because, and that's why I think I don't have much confidence that this can be defeated because this is just one aspect of an utterly corrupt society that, everything I write about and talk about is just how we are utterly corrupt from the lowest level, from dog catcher all the way up to the top. I mean,
Sure.
At all levels, this corruption is systemic. They're good people, they're honest people everywhere, but they're so outnumbered, they're powerless. And for something like this goes to the right to the core of whether we even have a free country. If you don't have free elections, especially when, how many commercials have you seen? Is it, the troops died for this, they died for your right to vote, and if you don't vote, don't complain, and the precious right of vote, that kind of thing. And this is the basic democratic right, and how we've made fun of other countries, the third world countries, and sent overseers in there. So if this really exposes the core of our hypocrisy, if it can be shown even to the asleep masses that, wow, this is, they really letting dead people vote. They have some mobster that was guaranteeing 300,000 votes here. They're delivering
where
ballots.
Is Skinny Joey? We want Skinny Joey to come forward and give him a free pass. I want this out in the open.
Yeah, notice how nobody, when he made that rather remarkable, confession.
If they're talking to him, we wouldn't know about it. So
but I mean, when you think like that, some of the, again, if we had a free press, wouldn't that be a story? Mobster in Philadelphia.
Any tabloid press would have leaped all over that. Come on.
Exactly. Yeah, so I mean that's what I'm saying. Anybody, even if it's bull, And I really don't know. I don't know what he.
I don't think it is, frankly. It read it read very, very straight to me, like it really was.
Sure. What would be his motivation? I mean, what would he get out of that? As you know,
right.
I mean, I don't see what the point of that would be. But even if you're skeptical, okay, be skeptical, but interview him and say, hey, this is, if nothing else, I mean, again, it
he
gives
should be on 60 Minutes if 60 Minutes were really an honest-to-God news organization.
Absolutely. Philadelphia mobster, okay, maybe it's BS. Maybe he has some strange motivation, but that's a story. And, we should see
huge.
a Mike Wallace type grilling, hey, Skinny Joe, so what, tell us how this happened and what was, because that goes to the core that, if a mobster, for instance, at that level can get involved in that, what does that say about the process? But that's why I think that, and that's why Trump is, so far is encountering what I suspected he would encounter. The state officials that are corrupt because they're part of the corrupt process. The courts are corrupt. They're part of the corrupt process. I mean, the Pennsylvania, how is he cannot possibly win in Pennsylvania because the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is the one that before the election allowed mail-in ballots. They ruled that it was okay for them not to be dated. So that opens the door to the most, immense corruption imaginable. And for the Supreme Court, that state, to do that shows how many people are involved, how deep this goes.
Well, as I said, it's thousands minimum, thousands. Yeah. Not just in Pennsylvania. It's all over the place.
Sure, and so for everybody, everybody says, people like me, it's such a big conspiracy. Of course it is. Look at the post office workers. Again, I look at motivation, Jeff. Whether it's some poor farmer that claims he saw a UFO 50 years ago and his life is destroyed, discredited, he loses his job, his wife leaves him. So what was his motivation? Why would he make up a story like that? His life was ruined, that kind of thing. Or whistleblowers that come forward at companies or anywhere else, and they're always retaliated against. Happens
right.
over and over again. So it takes a lot of courage to do it, but they're people are motivated in these cases by altruism. They're doing what they think is the right thing. So these that one post office guy that talked about hearing his supervisor and somebody else talking about backdating ballots. Again, these are not big officials. This is a supervisor at a post office. So if it's happening at that level, how big is this thing? If they can,
it's
exactly
from sea to shining sea.
It has to be. Yeah. So for you're right about Trump because Trump, I've written about Trump. He's largely tweeted and done nothing, and he's still tweeting now, but he's keeping this alive. Now I just don't know.
Well, that executive order from 2018, that's the key to unlocking this whole monstrosity. Did you hear that last half hour with that attorney explaining it? I'll send it to you. You listen to it. It's 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's good.
Well, and I'm also somebody's talking, and again, there's so much. It's so hard, especially with Trump, because the Trump cult is always claiming that he's doing these things behind the scenes, and I have no way of verifying it. But there's something about national. I'm a JFK guy, and I'm not sure what they're talking about. I think it's National Security Action Memorandum 50 something that they claim he's the first president.
NSM, yeah.
Okay,
NSM
so you know about
50 something. Yeah. But you got to look at the video. I'll send it to you.
Okay, that's it. Because
she's this attorney. She explains it really well. And it just, when you hear it, you're going to be amazed. He literally, in that executive order, if there is reasonable cause to suspect it's just one little thing in it, the mainstream media as being involved with foreign interference, he can shut them down. Shut them down.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens here, but I think that Trump, even if he is sincerely doing this, and that this isn't just part of what I've called the Trumpenstein project, this big actor thing. If he's sincerely now deciding, okay, I've frittered away pretty much my entire first term. Now I'm going to finally appoint a Secretary of Defense that wants to bring the troops home. Now I'm going to do something. I'm going to maybe try to clean house and finally do something. I don't know, but if this is the case, it's kind of a very curious way to wait so long. But he's up against forces again. Every part of the media is monolithic here. They are not going to accept if this, especially if it's the Supreme Court or whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, how many times you hear there's no evidence, no evidence? They keep screaming this at the top of their lungs. I've argued with people on social media over and over again. I don't know what your definition of evidence is. There's tons of indications there that this is. So, of course, yeah, we may not be able to judge it, but you need to have an investigation. The problem is, who's going to do the investigation? Every organ in this country is metastasized, is full of this corruption. So who's going to investigate? The FBI probably should, but the FBI is run by Christopher Wray, another Trump appointee who is a never-Trumper and is part of the problem. So the FBI, look, what's the FBI done during Trump's administration? They've pretty much sympathized with his enemies and not gone after anybody. So they're not going to investigate. And the election officials, I mean, they told the New York Times, nope, in all 50 states, no, there's no fraud here. Well, they're the ones that would be perpetrating it. So, of course, you have to investigate them. So, who is going to do the investigating? Can you come up with any kind of official body that can? You can't. Congress can't. Certainly, if the House or the Senate, either way, either the House is run by the Democrats, who are never going to accept any evidence of voter fraud that will keep Trump in office, or the Senate, which is effectively run by the Democrats, even if they hold power with the two seats left up in Georgia, because you have so many rhinos like Romney, people that are in there that are not going to go against this corrupt system, which they all benefit from this, Jeff. They're all part of the system that reelects 96% of incumbents every election.
That's exactly the right amount. That's a correct percentage, too. That's right.
Yeah, and so they benefit from this. They know. I mean, they know that that people like that Nancy Pelosi or Chucky Schumer or Mitch McConnell, these people, Lindsey Graham's, they would be easy to beat if the other party really wanted to beat them. They could easily put much better candidates up there, and they would certainly destroy them with their record and just say, why'd you do this, and this? And it'd be very easy to do. But they don't do that. Most of the people don't realize how many of these candidates run unopposed, where they don't even run a candidate. We had guys in my district where I would always, my rule of thumb was always, I just voted against all incumbents, always. And but most of the time, when we have a tenured politician in here, the other major party doesn't run a candidate against them. And I don't think there's a sadder commentary on the electoral process that you're trudging, the people are trudging to the polls to vote for a candidate who has no opposition. But that has happened many, many times. So we don't have, I've written a lot about the history of electoral fraud in America. It's a sad history, and so I would always cringe when people would talk about the precious right to vote and the soldiers died for this. That's bull. The soldiers never died for this. Soldiers died because the bankers ordered them there. They were ordered to, but they certainly never died for our freedom. They certainly never died for our right to vote. But so anything that exposes, and that's why in this case I don't have a dog in this hunt. I'm as you know, I'm a Trump agnostic, but I am for anything that exposes corruption, and the corruption's everywhere. So I am rooting as hard as I can for this to come out in the open, because we need sunshine, we need disinfectant.
No, and if this happens, if it fully, and I don't mean backdoor deals made to let people slime their way out the back door and not be held accountable. If we really do account for the Constitution and hold it up and bring these people to justice, big names, they'll be doing 20 to life, a lot of them. And that's what has to happen.
Sure. I mean, you get a hold of that. Was it the Pennsylvania Attorney General, whatever, that said, Trump can't win here, Biden. It's like, it's one thing to be confident, but when you make this kind of declarative statements, and I think Nancy Pelosi said the same thing too. Now, whether they're just confident at or whatever, we're all, a lot of us say that these presidents, or even you can go to candidates, are selected rather than elected. So I think this goes to the core of what when I wrote about the vote scam, stuff with the Collier brothers. You interviewed them. There's such a history of this. So I think what's happening now is validating the work of people like that. And it's showing that,
totally.
we were
agreed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well
said.
So I'm thinking of those people when I don't care about Trump. And Trump, to the extent that he's sincere, is going to make this about him, and that all these forces came out because they had to stop Trump, and that's the way his cult feels too. I don't look at it that way at all. I mean, I think it was always this corrupt. But for whatever reason, maybe more people are paying attention this time because of Trump derangement syndrome. So many people hate him so much that they just maybe went to even more extreme lengths than usual. But I don't even care. I want to show the process. I want people to see the sausage being made, because when they sit there and joke about basically they've inferred that dead people, that always happens. Well, it should never happen. There should never be there's not a single dead person that can vote. I'm sorry, it can't happen. But it happens all the time, and it's happened since Landslide Lyndon Johnson discovered how crucial the dead vote was in the 1948 corrupt election. And so these things go back, and there's a history of it. We tend to ignore it because we have very short memories, and both the 2000 and 2004 elections were very fishy, and they were tended in one state both times, in Florida, and Gore pushed it for a long time, 37 days. They're talking about Trump. Well, that dragged on for 37 days, so the Supreme Court just gave the presidency to Bush. Everybody kind of shrugged and went on. I mean, that's a pretty crappy way for an alleged democratic process to work. 2004, obviously, there were no reforms made to whatever went on in 2000 in Florida, because the exact same thing happened. And this time, John Kerry kind of ran with his tail between his legs and didn't put up any fight at all. And so everybody just kind of shrugged again. And then when Obama came along, the woke part of the country just went nuts. They wanted so bad to have him as a president, and the Republicans nominated two of the worst candidates of all their horrible candidates they've ever nominated. McCainiac and Romney were just both awful. So I'm sure there was fraud in both those elections, but we didn't really see it because I think that those candidates were so bad that Obama legitimately could have beat them easily, because they just were not any good. And it wasn't until then, of course, Trump versus Hillary, a lot of shenanigans went on there, and it's kind of hilarious now to watch the Democrats and the talking heads in the media talk about questioning the process, how Trump is questioning it, when they certainly question it themselves. Now, the difference in why I like what's happening now much better is because we're looking at our own electoral officials, and that's what should be done. That's why the one thing that does worry me, though, is that there's too much talk of China here. I don't want to hear China. I've even tried to bring Iran in. And to me, if it becomes a China thing, it's just the same thing as Russia last time. That's ridiculous, because Russia, China, Iran especially, that's completely ridiculous. They are not coming in. They're not the ones that are delivering ballots in the middle of the night. They're not the one that are demanding that no photo IDs at these places, so that people can find out what voters in those districts have died but are registered, so they can just go and vote in their name, because that's how it happens. And that's when people say, it's you're suppressing the vote by demanding a photo ID. Well, you're depressing the dead vote. Yeah, you are doing that, and you should, because they don't have a right to vote any longer. But these are the kind of things I hope that they don't talk. They don't come up with it. And I see already with Trump and all, because they tend to point at China. I'm no fan of China, much as the Democrats point at Russia. And I think, again, I just hate it when we point to boogeymen anywhere.
Russia is no threat. Russia is benign. Russia is not a threat. China is offensive. China is aggressive all over the place. In our own Fort Detrick lab and our biosafety weapons labs, you name it. They're aggressively stealing everything.
No, I have no, again, we have way too many, very curious connections to China. But again, we have to take responsibility, because we're responsible for that. We're the ones that have these entangling alliances with China. We're the ones. I don't blame China for raking us over the coals with these trade deals. As Ross Perot said, I don't know what idiot made these trade deals, but we allowed that to happen. And Trump is trying, at least, to some degree, to take that back. But we need to take responsibility. Our own elected officials need to stand up and say, look, whatever happens, we need to stand up to Israel in terms of foreign policy. We need to stand up to China in terms of trade or anything else where they're trying to make inroads on us. And we need to demand better of our own officials, because we're supposed to be running our electoral process. Now, if China or anyone else does, it's the fault of our officials who allowed that to happen. And so that's why I think when you point at China or anywhere else, it kind of takes the onus off of our own elected officials. I want to see the people that are responsible for this. I want to see the people all the way down to those people like that supervisor, that post office supervisor, or the people in Philadelphia and Detroit, in Green Bay, and cities like that, where they blocked out the windows, and these are not big workers at all. I mean, some maybe volunteers, I guess, but those are the people you have to question, because what you're doing is you're cheating. And if you're investigating a sporting event, it's the same kind of thing. Well, yeah, okay, you won, but if you cheated, is that supposed to be allowed to happen? That's not. And this is obviously bigger than a sporting event, because if cheating is allowed, then it gets to the point where, as long as and I think that's where we are now in this divided country, is that both sides, I think, are happy if their team or their whichever party they're rooting for wins, and they don't care how it gets done. They want to win, and I think that's where
they don't care at all. Are you kidding? No. Take no prisoners. No. Have you seen that? I think it's a man, a tranny, in Pennsylvania, Dr. Rachel Levine, the director of health. Well, the word now is that Biden is going to name her as his Secretary of Health.
Oh, wouldn't that be fitting? She certainly looks like a picture of health.
Do you believe? Oh, Biden nominates PA Secretary of Health Dr. Rachel Levine as Surgeon General.
Wow!
With her little, can you see that ogre in a little uniform? Oh my God! All right, yes. And greaseball Chucky Schumer is proposing doing Biden's cabinet confirmation hearings before the inauguration. See, this is the bum's rush. They're trying to run this all over, so they think that Trump will just give up. No, I hope to hell he invokes that for the soul of the country. No matter what label you're wearing, we cannot allow this to stand, or we're done. Back in a minute. Hold on. Okay, welcome back. Talking with Donald Jeffries, brilliant writer, and I hope you continue to crank out these books. They're so important. At an honest look at American history, like you will find nowhere else. Give the name of the books that you want to push right now in the best sense of the term. I'm going to remind people there are going to be still lockdowns as these lunatic communist and rhino governors continue to dictate law as if there is no legislature in their states. They're insane. Kemp, Newsom, these people ought to be locked up. They're crazy.
Yeah, they absolutely are. We are being ruled by. It's just the best of the
megalomania. Megalomania.
Yeah, well, I would urge people to try to check out. Certainly, Hidden History is my bestseller, but it talks about the history from JFK assassination up to the Obama years. But Crimes and Cover-Ups in American Politics, 1776-1963, which has a foreword by Ron Paul. That is that came out last, and that's that really goes into a lot. For instance, it talks so much about Lincoln, but one of the things it brings up is how Lincoln really first started the real suppression of the vote during the 1864 election, when they did everything they could, as General Benjamin Beast Butler admitted in a letter to Secretary of War Edwin Stanton. I have done all that I can to stop the secessionists from voting in New York City, New York was considered a hotbed of Democrats, and they certainly should have gone for General McClellan, who they loved, who was a Democratic candidate. But again, it was fishy at that point, and really every election in one way or another has been questionable since then, because it was allowed to happen. And certainly we saw in 1876 when Samuel Tilden, who was all I've read was a decent guy, was a good Democrat, was completely raped by the process. He won the popular vote and the Electoral College, and they screwed him out of the last few states, the electoral-wise. And I've talked before on the show how that's, as a concession, the Republicans gave the Democrats, they ended Reconstruction in the South. It's the only reason it ever ended. So, these kinds of elections, and because they happened, and Americans at the time, you had Tammany Hall, you had massive graft everywhere. People recognized already, especially after the Civil War, when so many bad precedents were set, these big city politics, these big city machines became instituted everywhere, and they still exist. Mayor Daley in Chicago may be gone, but you can still see their impact in cities like Philadelphia. So it's completely plausible to me that a skinny Joey mobster type could come up and run that show and deliver 300,000 ballots for whatever candidate they wanted to win. And I think that should be investigated, but apparently nobody's interested. In fact, when I posted it on social media, Facebook informed me their fact checkers determined that it was false. Now, maybe it is false, but the story was about him bragging about it. That's not false. They quoted him. So, then you investigate that and see. But so we have a long history of that. So people, if they read that book, they'll find that. And so certainly Bullyocracy, my book on bullying, is my newest book that I'd love to have people read. And I've signed a contract. I'm going a different path. My next book is coming out next year sometime, and it's going to be about showbiz and scandals and murder and mystery in the entertainment world. It's going to be called On Borrowed Fame, so a little bit different, but it's the same kind of thing.
That's the title? On Borrowed Fame?
On Borrowed Fame, yeah. And it's kind of a treatise on how fame...
Oh, yeah, borrowed, hoard, fame?
Borrowed. On borrowed fame, yeah, because I think that, fame is... And I look at it, as that, because I've communicated with so many people that were on television shows back when I was a kid, and or were in bands and had sold millions of records, and it's just amazing how many of them were screwed over by the process, who didn't make very much money. We thought they were all rich, and 15 minutes of fame, the old way Andy Warhol second is saying, is very appropriate, because so many of these people were just famous for a brief period of time, and they kind of retreated back into the shadows. And I'm fascinated by that. So, also I go into a lot of the corruption and certainly the conspiracies behind the deaths of people like John Lennon and Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley and John Belushi, Natalie Wood. I look into all those because I've written about them before. And so it's different, but it's not from what I totally write about, because I'm always just trying to pretty much expose what I think is, in that case, it's a different kind of hidden history, because it's hidden entertainment history. But so people, if they
let me just remind everyone, the news is going up momentarily if it's not already up. David Icke has a new video out, and he has incorporated in the video the Johns Hopkins all-cause of death analysis, which was pulled by Johns Hopkins today because it blew the legs off the entire COVID fraud. There is no virus. There's a lot of talk that it's actually a bacteria which is causing embolisms, thrombosis, clotting. It's a bacteria, they think. Anyhow, this David Icke video is essential for everyone to watch and consider. Make up your own mind, but watch the damn video. That I've got the Johns Hopkins all-cause death analysis up right under David's video. Fauci, the little thug, has reversed himself again. Now he says that the schools have to stay open. Open the schools. This guy's unbelievable. He's just incredible. Dr. Scott Atlas has resigned from the Trump administration. Who knows why? But get this. Now here's really something that is of concern. How did they get this authority? Let me find it. Hold on, I got just a second here. Okay. Study finds that 90% of the patients who died allegedly, it's a lie, from COVID-19 had, and who put this there? A DNR, do not resuscitate order, on their chart.
Yeah.
So they were legally allowed, these hospitals, to let tens of thousands of people die. Who put the DNR order on there?
Yeah.
That I want to know. I haven't been able to read this yet, but that is sickening.
It's unbelievable.
Truly sickening.
And again, if we had one, even one small part of this crumbling country, any part of it that wasn't corrupt or tainted, you would launch the biggest investigation in the history of the world into what I think is the biggest psyop in the history of the world, because there's so much here. But the problem is, who investigates it? There is nobody to investigate this, and because they're all part. First of all, they're not. Yeah, if they're not. Exactly. Well, if they're not complicit in it, they've bought into it, and they're not willing. They're asleep, and they're, oh my God, I knew so. Yeah, I've known people that were sick too. The problem is, people have been sick. People have died. But the guy you played the clip, was it? God, what was the guy? The British guy that said it's just a bad flu. Fantastic. Roger Hodgkinson or something like that. They were Hodgkinson. Yeah, just one of the greatest I think the best speech that's been made about this the entire time. Right. But he hit, because he's a preeminent virologist. This guy knows he knows more than Bill Gates.
He's also selling kits that allegedly look and find and identify coronavirus. Now, we know the PCR test is it's essentially worthless. All they do is they keep magnifying until it finds something in the coronavirus family, which is enormous. And that makes you positive for corona. It's not true. It's a lie. No. It doesn't work.
That's why you have, things like the crazy NFL, what they're doing now, where the Denver Broncos yesterday, basically it was unfair they weren't competitive because they had 4 quarterbacks. None of them were sick. None of them had any virus.
96% of the positive results are false. They're not sick. These people are not ill.
No, it's insane. So obviously, if this is a real, Black Plague type of thing, you'd know if you had it. So clearly, people are testing positive that are walking around with whatever common cold thing in it
and they're calling them symptom-free but infected, which is a goddamn lie. Excuse me, because that test, the PCR test, the gold standard test, is turning out 94 or 96% false positive responses. Right. So if you get tested and they tell you you're positive, you tell them to shove off. If you get sick, you stay home and take care of yourself. Don't go in a damned hospital. They'll kill you.
Of course.
Sorry. That's my feeling.
How do we respond to both of this kind of fraud? In the one case we talked about the election, how do you stand up against when the entire society is involved in this or is vested in it? They have a vested, first of all, because
they've been conned and programmed to have a vested interest in it.
Absolutely.
If they were left to their own devices, they wouldn't have bought into this crap. It's the stats are the same as a bad flu season. It's a cold virus. It's not a flu virus, even that. Go ahead.
No, so at this point, there's no way, especially with the COVID stuff. They have so much. Look at what has happened. What they've reconstructed the world. I mean, everybody's wearing masks. They're shutting everything down. Schools are closed. I mean, movies, everything. But so they have reacted so irresponsibly and so over the top. They are never going to admit they're wrong. Because then they prove the kooky people like us, the crazy conspiracy
theorists. Oh, they'll never admit anything. They'll just let it eventually slowly go away. Yeah. Look, masks are dangerous. They should not be worn. We know that, and I mean it. They are dangerous. They are not healthy. They should not be used. There's no reason for it at all. This virus is going to infect everyone sooner or later in this country. It should be allowed to run loose now. Open everything up now, just like the doctor said. Hodgkinson. Open it up. Absolutely. This whole thing is a joke, a bad, deadly joke on the way we live life and do business, and how many businesses have been destroyed. By the way, the globalist elite looks at every country as a corporation, as a business. And when that country runs to the end of its usefulness, it's taken down. I am told that this country, as a corporation, has pretty well passed its usefulness, so it's being taken down by this fake pandemic. Now, here's another clip from the movie Network. Ned Beatty talks to the anchorman Howard Beale, played by Peter Finch. He's trying to clue him in on how the world is run. This is 4 minutes and 40 seconds of timelessly important video dialogue from this movie Network. Take a listen.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale, and I won't have it. Is that clear? You think you merely stopped a business deal. That is not the case. The Arabs have taken billions of dollars out of this country, and now they must put it back. It is ebb and flow, tidal gravity. It is ecological balance. You are an old man who thinks in terms of nations and peoples. There are no nations. There are no peoples. There are no Russians. There are no Arabs. There are no third worlds. There is no West. There is only one holistic system of systems. One vast and immane, interwoven, interacting, multivariate, multinational dominion of dollars. Petrodollars, electrodollars, multi-dollars, Reichmarks, Rense, rubles, pounds, and shekels. It is the international system of currency which determines the totality of life on this planet. That is the natural order of things today. That is the atomic and subatomic and galactic structure of things today. And you have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone. Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale? You get up on your little 21-inch screen and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and ITT and AT&T and DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today. What do you think the Russians talk about in their councils of state? Karl Marx? They get out their linear programming charts, statistical decision theories, Minimax solutions, and compute the price-cost probabilities of their transactions and investments, just like we do. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business, Mr. Beale. It has been since man crawled out of the slime. And our children will live, Mr. Beale, to see that perfect world in which there's no war or famine, oppression or brutality. One vast and ecumenical holding company for whom all men will work to serve a common profit, in which all men will hold a share of stock, all necessities provided, all anxieties tranquilized, all boredom amused. And I have chosen you, Mr. Beale, to preach this evangel.
Why me?
Because you're on television, dummy. 60 million people watch you every night of the week, Monday through Friday.
I have seen the face of God.
You just might be right, Mr. Beale.
Well, he certainly saw the face of the New World Order, didn't he?
Mm-hmm. It reminded me a little bit of was it O'Brien's speech to Winston Smith in 1984? Very similar to that, or kind of. There's so many parallels. There's so many Orwellian. Certainly, the movie Network that's very appropriate too. But we are. And trying to convince people, and I don't know why more people are not waking up at this point, because everybody kind of jokes about 2020 and what a year it's been, but it really has been an unprecedented year. But you'd think that I don't know if more people have woken up or not. I mean, they should have, but because everything from this virus,
it's hard to blame them when they're locked in, locked down, house arrest, home imprisonment. And they're staring at the goddamn television, and they think that they're being informed. They're being programmed into oblivion. They're not being really programmed into illumination. No. The opposite is true.
And that's why because they trust these faulty authority figures, and basically when they demonize people with conspiracy, they call people conspiracy theorists now. Basically, they're demonizing anybody who questions these authority figures. Because people like us, what we're doing, we're pointing out that this country is now full of naked emperors. None of these people wearing any clothes, and we're trying to point it out. We're full of naked emperors and giant elephants running around the room. And some of us are trying to point it out, but the problem is just the reason why that fairy tale, the Emperor's New Clothes, had such an impact with people, because they realized, wow, sometimes it takes a little kid to point out the obvious, and that everybody else is scared to do that. Well, that's the way it is in America. The conspiracy theorists are that little kid collectively. But unlike the little kid was able to illuminate the people in the fairy tale, we've been able to wake up some people, but we're still if this pandemic has proven one thing, it's that we are really, really outnumbered. There's no question about it. And so we have a lot of work to do in trying to wake people up, but it doesn't look like, and unfortunately, I think that if Trump somehow succeeds through the Supreme Court, I don't think that's going to illuminate anybody, because then
Did you hear Devvy last hour, her column? She called for the president to take this issue to the American people. Mm-hmm. He has the executive order. We're under a state of national emergency. He can immediately announce he is giving a state of emergency speech to the American people, and the networks will have to cover it, because in that executive order, he has the ability to shut them down. And he needs to spell this all out to the people, that this is a momentous period in history, and unless we turn it around for all Americans, we're done. And he's not going to let that happen. He could go down in history as the greatest American president. It's possible.
Well, if he exposes the one of the root causes of our corruption, because obviously it's all based, we talk about how bad our political representation is. Well, it's all based on the fact that it basically, the fundamental foundation of that is the fact that the electoral process is corrupted, and that one reason why we get these awful people is that we don't really get them, because a lot of them are not honestly elected. So if we can show that, if we can demonstrate that, boy, it's to the effect that people, because I've tried to point that out to people over and over again, is that you really think that, I mean, maybe people are that dumb. I don't know. Maybe they really do want to keep reelecting the Nancy Pelosi's. I don't know. But I've just from what I know of and what you know of what the Collier brothers discovered, and historically the electoral fraud that's been there, we know this system has been corrupt for a long time. And we saw what's happened in the primaries in recent years. And the Democrats understood that when Bernie Sanders fans understood that, when he was screwed over, and he was screwed over in these primaries too. And they seem to have forgotten that. And they all climbed on board when they very mysteriously coalesced behind the weakest candidate, Joe Biden, for mysterious reasons. And nobody questioned that, why that was. They canceled some of the primaries because of the pandemic, unprecedented stuff. But they just allowed it to happen. And so people need to question all of that, because it's improper, to say the least. But I don't know how, other than getting the Supreme Court to rule on it. And then you're going to have that part of the country that hates Trump, and they believe that this is the greatest election.
We're going to at least a quasi-civil war. That's what the controllers want. They want this country to bleed, and it probably is going to bleed.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one reason why you're seeing so much more exposure of what I think probably happens in every election. You're seeing so much more, so it looks much more obvious this time to most of us, except for the people that hate Trump because they want him gone. They just want him gone. They don't care. But I think they're wanting to make it more obvious because they're this.
You raise an issue here. Would they rather have Trump gone and the nation go Bolshevik communist? That's pretty short-sighted if they do.
Yeah.
The issue is voting for the constitutional republic or communism. That's the issue. You've got to forget the personalities.
Right. Well, that's the problem is that Trump's personality is front and center, and that's all people are going by. That if you had if JFK was in office and he was saying the same things Trump were saying, first of all he would say them in a much more articulate way, and he wouldn't be boasting and making it personal about him. People would look at it completely differently. Or you can pick your favorite politician, but he's just
all things considered. I would much rather have Donald Trump to look at because I know what Donald Trump is. Joe Biden, no.
Right.
I don't want that.
Exactly.
I want nothing to do with that, or Hunter Biden, or the evil of the Biden crime family.
Well, plus, you want these people to check each other's power. I mean, the good thing about the partisan politics where they bicker over stupid things is that they cause, and that's why I think the libertarians have became so popular, is because we recognize that our leaders were so bad that the best thing you could hope for is that they don't do anything, or that they counter each other so they can't, because usually when they get together, Will Rogers said, the public is never safe when Congress is in session. I mean, that was a joke back then, and we can all certainly appreciate it now. Yeah, that's true.